All right, Andrew, man, I am excited to have you on here today. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
We got a lot to talk about today, but I want to talk about this one killer deal. You took a funeral home, converted it to housing. That's amazing, first off. But then you converted a funeral home to short-term housing. And if anyone caught the killer pun there, like death, like I don't know. Let's hear about that. Let's go there first.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So I got to give a lot of credit to my partner down there in Jacksonville. This property is located in Jacksonville, Florida. It was one of the oldest funeral homes in Jacksonville. It's a historically designated building, and my partner found it. He's a short-term rental operator down there. Does a ton of them. He's got a couple hundred units that he both owns and manages, and I'm in the short-term rental space too. But we got into this project with a vision to kind of turn it into something cool, and it's a very unique space. We bought the lot next door to it as well because we want to add a pool and some other amenities to the place. So it's kind of taken on a life of its own as a big project. But the plan is to turn it into 14 short-term rentals. The city is making us have a couple long-term units as well, more affordable units, and then it's going to have some retail space on the first floor that we're like toying around with some different unique ideas. But one of them being like a speakeasy type of spooky bar. But I have no business being in the bar business, so that might just be a pipe dream. But yeah, that's the plan right now. So we're still under construction. It took us over a year to get the permits going there. Jackson was a little bit backed up, and we had to go through the historic commission and all that stuff. But pretty cool project. So
Well, I think that's, me and Tom were talking yesterday about how you have to find different ways to take an asset and add value to it, or think outside the box. Like that's really think outside the box. Like one, I think just going from commercial to residential is usually a big lift for most people, and they can't see how that would happen. But you went from a very, call it a special use to commercial. Like, was that your guys' vision? Was the city saying, "Hey, let's go convert this"? Like, how did you guys came up with that
yeah,
idea?
so oddly, maybe not even oddly, but somebody had tried this with the building before us, and we found them right as COVID was kicking off, and they were going through a husband and wife duo were going through a messy divorce, and they were just trying to unload the asset. They actually finished like two of the units, so a lot of the
Okay.
space had been started and subdivided. So we kind of took somebody else's idea and we're like, this could work. I've had short term rentals since like 2017, and what I found is like at least what gives me some energy is kind of like um, the more niche, unique properties, right? I feel like they do really well in the space sometimes, and so my partner Eric approached me with it, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to help be a part of this and help pull some money together to make this a reality?" And I said, "Sure, this is kind of neat. It's a historic building. It's got that spooky vibe to it. We're gonna make him kind of Edgar Allan Poe themed rooms and decor and that type of stuff. And oddly enough, there's like a weird subculture of this that people like this stuff. And we actually connected with some influencers too that like all kinds of people that like talk to dead people and go visit grave sites and stuff, and like they're gonna help us do all kinds of like free social media work and stuff. So it's kind of taken on a life of its own. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. Was somebody else couldn't finish the project, and my partner found it, and we kind of just took the reins and started running with it. So
All right, cool. Well, let's move on before we beat that one to death.
sure, sure.
Jesus.
All right, Andrew, take us back though. We kind of went Tarantino style from fast forward going backwards now. You're a military man. You have a meetup for veterans. So first off, Tom and I thank you for your service, and I'm sure most of our listeners would as well. How'd you get into real estate? Was it while you were in the service? Tell us kind of how your journey started.
Yeah. So I kind of watched my dad do it a little bit growing up. He had a couple properties, and he wasn't really cut out to be a landlord, so to speak. He's grumpy all the time, and so tenants never loved him. But I watched him do it, and I kind of early from an early age said, okay, this kind of makes sense to me. I like the checks coming in the mail, aspect of the mailbox money, so to speak, right? And so I started reading whatever I could during college, and this was like early 2000s, right? And so of course, like, just to give the same answer that everyone gives, but Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read that probably 2004 or 5, and so immediate like mental mindset shift for me. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go out and start buying real estate, start buying cash flowing assets, right? And so I got out of college, went straight into the military in 2007. Great time to be starting my real estate career, and I bought a 4 flat and did kind of the house hack thing, but I didn't know what I was doing, right? So I put the 25% down. YouTube was in its infancy then, but like I learned how to fix stuff on YouTube, painted all the units myself, like, but I got in the game, and that was like the most important thing. And then the world kind of collapsed around me, and so I bought a few more smaller projects after that one, but my early 20s like didn't really do much after that first purchase, and I didn't really know, like, it was kind of, if ＢiggerPockets wasn't around yet, I was reading like Foreclosures for Dummies to try to learn how to like acquire cheap properties, and so the information wasn't always there, and like, I'm using that as an excuse, but like that was like one of the limiting factors from a resource standpoint for me, is just I didn't have the knowledge to understand how to scale at that point. And then I kind of realized a few years later, like, okay, if I didn't have a resource, i.e. money or time or whatever, let me go find someone that does. So I started partnering with other people to buy mid-sized apartment complexes. So starting in 2013 or so, I started to really double down on that and buy a bunch of stuff.
Nice. Did you know that whole For Dummies series? There's like 2,000. They have like literally 2,000 novels.
I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised because I've seen some really, really strange ones.
Do you know what their number one is? Their number one title is?
No.
Sex for Dummies.
Sex for Dummies.
It's like I can only imagine like what that, like it's like 5th grade going over to the Robert Crown Center, and like I couldn't imagine what that book would be. I can imagine what it'd be, but I can't imagine like how they break it down.
we have a joke photo of one of my buddies holding it up next to his face once when we were at like a Barnes and Noble in like 2005 or something. But yeah, I'm not surprised that that's the number one.
You're in Beverly now. Would you grow up in Southside?
No, I'm a New Yorker originally, but when I was stationed in El Paso, Texas, in the Army, and I met my wife down there. She works for the VA, and she's a Chicago native. She's a Beverly native. So when I was getting out of the Army, I took a job with Ernst & Young as a consultant for them, and they offered me New York or Chicago. So I was like, geez, now you really have to make me choose. I was traveling a lot at the time, so I figured it'd probably be a good move to be closer to my wife's family than to mine. And but I still get back to New York, every 3-4 months or so to visit my mom and family. And so, but yeah, my wife's a Beverly native, so that's how we ended up 3 blocks from my in-laws. So.
All right, so just to rewind a second, you buy the 4 unit, you said you put 25% down, so you didn't even know about the VA loan.
No.
So you're one of the biggest assets here, bullet in chamber.
I know, and so it's kind of funny. It's kind of ironic, right? Like that's how little education there was on it. I literally thought the VA loan was like, oh, I could apply to get like a $30,000 like advance of money or something. Like I didn't know what it was, and so there was nobody teaching anybody about it. There was nobody shouting it from the rooftops. That's why I try to double, triple down on that now to help clients, because I still think there's not enough people that talk about it. So.
Yeah, no, it's funny to think that, right? Because it's such a good asset. It's such a crazy product.
It would have been the easiest way for me to get into that property, and I took the absolute hardest path towards it. So.
So, all right. You also mentioned, you go and start saying, okay, well, I need to partner with people to start building this and start buying mid-sized apartment buildings. That sounds, great. That sounds so easy, but going through that, you have a track record of a 4 unit. Like, were these people in your network? Talk through that. A lot of our listeners are in that point. They've house hacked, and now they're saying, what next? How do I scale? And how do I partner? Like, how do I find someone? Because I go to meetups, and it's everyone else just like me looking for the same thing. How do I go find this partner and start scaling?
Yeah. I mean, the first major partnership I did was with 2 of my friends from college, right? And so they had capital, not a lot of time. They had maybe bought a house or 2 in the last 6 or 7 years, but basically we went back to El Paso. I was already in Chicago at this point, Found an 11 unit for $400,000, oddly enough, and it was actually in a decent area. Just needed a good amount of work. But we needed $100K for a down payment. So I think I had 40, another one of my friends had 40, and another had 20. So we're like, there we go. There's our money, right? Not even thinking about, oh, we need contingency funds. We need additional, closing cost money. It was very, we were like very short-sighted on a lot of other things, but we went with it. And my biggest thing I tell people all the time is like taking action is the better than education any day of the week, right? It's the best form of education, in my opinion. So I do that a lot, where like I'll jump headfirst into something if I want to go after it. And that was the case with this one. I was like, okay, we have some money, let's go find a place and let's do it. And we did it, and we made a ton of mistakes, and it still ended up being like probably the best decision, that one property that like I ever made, right? So, and every subsequent purchase, I could probably tell a very similar story. But that's all it was finding people that had the resources that I lacked, right? I didn't have $100,000 at the time. I had a decent W-2 job, and so did my partners. But we all had a little bit of money, and we pulled it together to make something happen. So that's how it all started.
For someone looking to do the same thing, what are some gotchas on the partnership, like structuring that, making sure all sides are protected?
Yeah, if you're going to do a normal LLC setup, obviously you want an operating agreement, right? That's going to govern how you do business, who's doing what, who's responsible for what, and it's a good document to always fall back on, right? And it's not only going to outline your percentage ownership and all that good stuff, but you could put specifics in there, on key responsibilities. And if somebody's not holding up their end of the bargain, it's a good way to renegotiate the deal. I think what's some of the gotchas that I faced over the years were like, I'd say the number one thing was alignment of goals between partners, right? If I think that's one of the most critical things to talk about when you first get started, is how do we come to an agreement on where we want to be in 2, 3, 10 years from now? And who knows? A lot of people don't know where they're going to be in 10 years or where they want to be in 10 years at this point. But I think my first couple partners and I had some disagreements around how we wanted to grow this thing, right? And so was it going to just be one property? Was it going to be 10 properties? Did we want to scale outside of El Paso or Chicago, wherever we were going to look at? And so I think nailing down who's going to do what, and then what your goals are as a group, probably the two most critical things, in my opinion. And obviously, having an attorney look over everything and make sure you're doing the right stuff. But that would be the first piece of advice that I'd give for people looking to partner with others.
Yep. And when you first got started, did you sell yourself short? I know I've heard that from other people. They underestimate, if they're the guy on the ground, like how much time it's going to take, and oh crap, like I should have, I'm worth more than this.
The first probably 8 deals I did, like I totally underestimated how much time and effort I was going to be putting into. And at the time I was putting in equal dollar amounts per my percentage ownership as everybody else was, but I was doing all the work. And it took me probably 5 years before I put my foot down and said, hey, look, if I'm going to be running the project, I need at least a little bit more equity in exchange for that effort. But I think a lot of people suffer from that too, right? It's like there's naturally someone or two people that might take the lead on some things, and eventually all things start gravitating towards or orbiting around those two people, and everyone kind of just sort of heads to the sidelines, the other folks that aren't as involved. And so I would say, like, if that starts happening to folks, like, you got to nip it in the bud real quick, because all of a sudden 5 years in, I was like, running all these different deals and not getting paid for it. And it was a really eye-opening thing once I realized how much time I was actually putting into these.
Yep. All right. So you've mentioned Jacksonville, you mentioned El Paso. What's the first property in Chicago you bought?
Aside from my primary residence, I partnered with two of my best friends now, who we own BCG Real Estate Group with, 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗫, who you had on the show before, and 𝗬𝗲𝗬𝗫𝗫.
Joey, episode 245, to interject. Great episode on short-term rentals.
Yep. JD's the short-term rental wizard of our group. JD's a Navy guy, Joey's an Air Force guy, so it's kind of like an unlikely pairing of our partnership. But we got together and we said, hey, look, like, they were doing some cool stuff on the short-term rental side. it was still a little new to me, but we had a thesis of let's buy a 4-flat, turn one of the units into a Airbnb and juice our rents that way. And so we started overanalyzing everything and looking at properties, and we found a 4-unit in Wicker off market that needed a little work, but not a ton of work. And that was the first one we took down, and this would have been early 2018, so about 6 years ago now.
Okay, so you're in Wicker. We get a 4 unit, and the plan is, you know, we have three long term. We're going to Airbnb one of them. What are some of those early mistakes?
So COVID was probably the first big problem, as a lot of people faced. It's not really a mistake on our part, but that was the first major hurdle that we hit. At the time, Joey and JD were pretty experienced on the short-term rental side. We didn't fully understand probably how bad the seasonality was in Chicago when we first started, right? And so we were constantly trying to figure out how do we fill these winter months with some midterm, more stable renters, because you know, December, January, February, you were getting literally 0 Airbnb bookings. So that was the first thing we had to account for after we got that thing furnished. And then we put a few, I would say, midterm renters in there through the winter. Eventually we got some actually longer term stays with the furnished units. I think we also I don't want to say, probably underestimated how quickly we would have to refresh some of the furniture. The last group that we had, which made us go away from the furnished route, this was just post COVID, basically destroyed everything, not everything that we had in there, but pretty much made a lot of the furniture obsolete. So we ended up converting it back to a long-term rental once we realized COVID was going to be a challenging period. But so yeah, I would say looking back, seasonality was a huge thing in Chicago, right? A lot of other markets might not face it as bad. I have some short-term rentals in Nashville too. Sure, the winter gets a little bit rough, but the weather there is a lot bit better than Chicago in the winter. So so the tourism kind of stays almost year round. So that would be a big thing. And then just navigating some hurdles with midterm rentals. Furnish Finder, there wasn't really good platforms back then either to find those short to midterm or longer stay furnished folks. Zillow was a decent resource. Airbnb didn't really have the infrastructure yet to incentivize that type of behavior. So we were constantly trying to adapt to figure out, okay, how do we secure a pretty good winter tenant, albeit at a lower rate, but something that was going to actually bring in revenue for us. But we made some mistakes along the way, and I wasn't as involved in the short-term rental stuff. Joey and JD had an own separate management company that was kind of spearheading just that one unit out of our portfolio. But yeah, those would be the mistakes I'd say we made, or the hurdles that we faced.
How much did you spend to furnish that unit? Because I always get a range for people. How big was the unit? How much did you guys spend?
It was a 2-1, probably 800 square feet, maybe 900 square feet at most. I think we spent probably $6,500 between furnishing and the labor to put it all together, maybe $7,000. We do a lot of midterm rentals now, so we've kind of refined our list over the years. But we never really bought anything too extravagant. IKEA's was our best friend back then with doing this stuff. So there's a lot of IKEA stuff, which is it's actually not as bad as sometimes it gets a rap for. But so yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it on a budget. Of course, home goods for all the decor, very standard for pictures and the bedside knickknacks and stuff. But yeah, I'd say about $7,000.
You made a comment that you had to take the stuff out because the tenant made it unusable. To tell us more about that. What you kind of smirked and almost you want to just fly by that comment, but I can't let that go.
we still talk about these guys. There was 2 or 3 dudes that moved in for I don't know, an 8-month furnished lease or something. It was right after COVID hit, and we were trying to figure out what to do with this unit because all Airbnb bookings went out the door. So these guys came in and they were fine, but we went to go turn over the unit after they left, and literally all the beds like had broken through the frames. The couches were, off their legs, and all the arms had been collapsed over. It was like, it looked like they just had like a Royal Rumble in the place before they left. So like anything that was salvageable, like we moved into the basement, and we ended up like giving it away over the years to like tenants that want it. It was like our little lost and found selection. But yeah, they pretty much, and so we sent them a bill afterwards, like everything they broke, and then like never heard from them ever again, and so that was our lesson with it. It was like, okay, this stuff's going to happen. There's way more wear and tear on the midterm on the furniture when you have people that are living there, like very, very much living there. So that was another lesson we learned for sure.
I think that's one of the frustration but joyous times of imagining, like, how the hell did they do that to this place? Like, I never knew fridge handles came off until like we really started doing hardcore C&D class type property management. Like, I thought it just came as part of the fridge door. Like, so it's like you're just like the door of like an oven coming off. It's like you just picture the kid like jumping up and down on the door. Like, it's like,
yeah, how does it
doing
happen?
Pull-ups.
You picture that Royal Rumble. Like, you picture the two guys like throwing each other on the, like, yeah, like
grown men in their late 20s. Yeah.
yeah. Did they set out to just break this couch? Like, who's gonna do it first? Like,
yeah, we kept picturing like the elbow drops going on.
Yeah, exactly,
over and
on
over
the bed.
again.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's awesome. All right, so you have success here. You keep investing. It sounds like you guys are always looking to do some sort of repositioning, right? We have either it's a short-term rental. I believe we're going to talk about zoning changes. Just before we dive in, high level, when you're looking at a property, it's like everything fair game. Like, you're looking at like, okay, what or when you're searching for anything right now, what's going through your head of how do you make these numbers work?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something we spend a lot of time on, and we have a lot of meetings when we're talking about properties, right? We try to dig in and figure out where is our angle, where's our mark that we could put on this to make the numbers work and make it make sense. And a lot of times it's the adding a unit, right? That's the big one we've exploited lately. Before that, it was converting a unit to an Airbnb to create some disparity in the rent. There's other things. We've developed a property management company over the years as we grew. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a unique position where like we can take on more projects that some people might turn on or not look at, because we know we can manage it a little bit more efficiently. So that's a little bit of a competitive advantage for us, is that we have local on-site management. So we could do it a little bit cheaper. We could do it a little bit more efficiently. We have a handyman that works full time for us that could take on more doors as we get them pretty quickly. So that's kind of a unique position that we have right now. We know the comps in these areas. We know how much work it's going to take to get.
What are these areas? Where you playing geographically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started in Wicker. We started kind of following the path of progress a little bit west, and we never ended up in Logan, but most of our properties are in Ukrainian Village, West Town, East Humboldt Park, and I would say like Smith Park would be our it's not even our outlier, but that would at the time was like our furthest south. Or further southwest, and then we just picked up a property in Pilsen Q4 last year, and we picked up a property in Mount Greenwood, oddly enough, that my neighbor was selling down by me. So we try to like find stuff that has that makes us more uniquely qualified to take over. The one in Mount Greenwood, we saw a real big mismatch in current rents and market rents, and there's a lot of demand down here for apartments because A, there's not a lot of them, and B, there's a lot of city workers that want to live in Beverly, Mount Greenwood that need a Chicago address, right? So that are from this neighborhood. So a lot of cops, firemen, teachers, all that. And so what we realized was like, the old owner hadn't raised rent in a long time. He wanted to keep his tenants, and I get that, but at some point in time, like, you got to get to market or close to. So we realized there was at least a 50 to 60% differential between market and I don't know how nobody else really saw this. But yeah, we look for those opportunities to add value.
So real quick, if you don't mind, let's talk about the Mount Greenwood one real quick, and let's talk about the financing, right? Because I actually had this discussion last week with another investor. He had a similar opportunity, but he had to put like 50% down to hit his DSCR, meaning because the bank is looking at the as-is rents there and saying, hey, yeah, you might have this game plan. We don't know if you're going to execute it or not. We have to go with what's existing. Therefore, we can only lend you X. So how did you, was this because of relationship with the bank? How did you work through the lending aspect of this?
So this is going to be a disappointing answer, but we bought it with cash.
Cash solves everything.
Yeah. So we were able to get a good price for it because of the cash piece. And but yeah, we experienced, we're under contract for a building right now that does not pencil from a DSCR standpoint. So what the bank we're working with now though is doing is they take in-place rents and they have their appraisers do a pro forma market rent analysis on the building as they do the appraisal. And so they'll usually allow at least some portion of the pro formas to count towards the future DSCR, knowing, because we've done this a number of times and knowing that we can get them to market. But a lot of times it ends up being putting a little bit more money down, right? And so whether that's 30, 35, 40, whatever it takes to kind of hit that number. We've built some really good relationships though, and this is what I'll encourage people to do. Like if you find a bank that you like working with and they're pretty good on their terms, like keep working with the same folks. Like it's always good to shop around, but we've done a lot of deals with the same lender, they're a credit union now, and they just got bought by another credit union, so they turned into a credit union. They weren't before, but we would send them a rent roll and an address, and they could tell us if we were approved or not within like 30 minutes, and the story, the answer always was, well, as long as it appraises fine, you're good to go, and so I would say, like, the more you do business with the same people, the easier it becomes down the road. So that's what we learned, like, in the relatively short 6-7 years we've been operating in Chicago. Like, you make your payments on time, you do what you say you're going to do, you be a good borrower, and you can keep going back to the same well and do business a lot easier, more efficiently going forward. So
yeah, that's all good stuff. All right, so I kind of derailed us, but what are some of going back to the original question of other ways we're looking for value? So the Mount Greenwood one, rents were vastly under market, very, need to get them up there without having to do much physical work to the building. Give us maybe one or two other examples where you repositioned something.
Yeah, I mean, what was that? Was that a reposition?
Yeah, so Pilsen there was a unique layout in a coach house, and so this was a weird one. They were getting like, I don't know, $1,300 for this 1 bedroom, 1 bath coach house, but we toured it. It had a whole nother floor that they were like saying is like a second living space, and it just had a shitter in the corner. It was like it wasn't even a full bathroom. So I was like, okay, we could turn this into a 2-bed, 2-bath and bring rent up to $2,400 with like relatively little money, right? So we look for those, like, we don't shy away from rehabs, right? But like we look for those weird opportunities where there's a layout change. One of JD's favorite things to do is we have a lot of 2-bedroom, 1 baths, but some of them are the standard front of the building, have a stubby bedroom. Think of a normal like bungalow style, a rounded, 3, 4, 6 flat, whatever. Those front units, they have a nice front room area, and then a stubby bedroom above the stairwell. That's usually like the
9x9. It's always
exactly.
9x9 or 8.5x9 every time.
Exactly. So what we started doing is we walled off that front piece and turned it into a big master bedroom.
Yep, ensuite.
Ensuite, with a big walk-in closet. And for whatever reason, people dig that shit. So we've been able to upsell rent. We look for storage opportunities. We don't typically like to bring in coin-operated laundry if it's not already there. But we have built storage units in basements before, and oddly have a weird amount of demand for those things. So yeah, there's a lot of like one-off things that we've done over the years that have we've learned from and tweaked and refined. But you know, the bigger third bedroom or bigger second bedroom piece has been a good one for us. The juice rents, and then layout, just normal layout changes that can optimize space for sure.
Well, I think we've all underestimated. I know I have personally the value of the storage, like where you don't even, sometimes you might throw in the remarks like plus storage, but you never know what that is. Like, but if you have a good storage space where, call it floor to ceiling and it's a good 6x4, whatever, like think about it. Like a self-storage place charges you 80 to $125 a month for that place. And there's a lot of people, think about how many self-storage places. There's a lot of people, a lot of your tenants that probably have those type of spaces. They don't even realize it. So there is value you get out of there, even though it's just this weird space in your basement that you get agitated because when people move out, you have to clean that out too.
For sure. Yeah. And we've had a lot of our basements just started getting filled with crap over the years. And then like it gets bastardized, whose is whose, and like people don't, take it out. And so we started just building these, like 6x6 rooms with a door on them and a lock and key. And, $50.
Are these drywall? They're just the chain fences, or?
We drywalled ours, but which is probably a little, we could probably do it for a lot cheaper, but we're still experimenting with a lot of that stuff. But so far we've been able to fill them all pretty successfully. So
we never like to mess around with the drywall in those. I'm not saying you're doing it wrong, but I know we experience, we get just the discoloration a lot of times in the basement, in the corners, where it's like, if that was just a fence or some sort of just kind of wood frame, and then you could see what's in there too all the time too, if you have more of a see-through approach.
Meth lab going on down there.
Yeah.
And just disclaimer to everyone, man, if you're gonna take storage in the basement area, like sign that hold harmless in case you flood, in case whatever. Like you do not want to be responsible for all this, and make that crystal clear. If you flooded, tell the tenant that, like, hey, last 3 years we flooded twice. Like, put whatever you want down here at your own risk.
Yeah, we had certain buildings where we'd actually, when material would get delivered on skids, we'd throw the skids down there in the storage space that we built out. So sometimes you go too high and say, listen, you got to keep it on the skids.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the ensuite though, because we've done that twice now at 2 different buildings, and it's great. Building out that front, you get a walk-in closet, you get the ensuite, and even if the bedroom is, call it, 12 by 10, it's not like some giant bedroom, but if you give them the ensuite, like, that is perfect. And then you have the second bedroom, and almost all of our tenants are just a couple. And that second bedroom is just an office. That second bedroom can be the small, skinny one off to the side there. And like everyone wants that ensuite. Everyone wants that closet. Like that is missing in a typical Chicago layout. Like that is not offered unless you're going all the way up to new construction. So I think that's a huge,
it is
huge play right there.
If we had the room, we'd make it French doors. And then they could choose to use it as we would never we would usually just take down that area over the stairs to make it one big room. We wouldn't do the closet because you had we'd keep the little tiny closet, but we'd at least make it optional then if they wanted to close it off and do whatever, or they could, but they always made it a bedroom for that reason of where else can you get that?
Yep, exactly.
And we market it as a bedroom too.
What he's doing though is like the front room becomes the master.
Yeah.
Like that, that's and you change the whole layout that way, but like that is because that you can't get that unless you go new construction. Like 2 units and 3 units are not set up that way. Yeah. So it's just it's something that's so different out there. You almost, I'm saying, you can charge whatever you want, but like you have a discrepancy there in pricing because you're so different from everything else that's out there.
Everyone's used to the small bedroom. So skinny, normal, So
exactly. All right, cool. That's all good stuff. Let's talk about zoning now. So and I think you've gone through both the ADU, you've also gone through by right, and you've also gone through getting an actual zoning change, which in Chicago is, a long, timely process. I just finished my first one. They made me sign a covenant, and here we are. We finally got it approved. But man, like it is a pain.
Yeah.
So I guess for our listeners, why don't we talk through that, requesting a zoning change so you can add an additional unit? Because we've covered ADU a couple different times here. I don't think we've ever done this in detail. So if you can talk from your example, we can maybe pause and break down some different aspects of it so our listeners can fully understand the process.
Yeah. And I'll make one caveat here is that like I think everyone's experience might vary in this space, right? There's a lot of
they're all crappy. There's not a good quick experience here.
It's like a colonoscopy. Yeah, none of them are fun. So we've gone through it with a couple different wards now with properties in different locations. So I have a couple data points to talk through, but dealing with whatever alderman, alderwoman that you have, you know, you're going to get a different answer, a different experience. Same with attorneys. Everyone's going to have a little bit slightly varied process in what they do. But we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into when we first started. So I just made an appointment with our alderman to say, hey, what do you suggest here? And he like slowly slid me a business card of an attorney's name. And he said, call this guy. He'll get you going, you know? And I thought that was the most Chicago thing I'd ever seen at the time. But I called the attorney.
And where's your $1,000 donation as well, sir?
Yeah. I called the attorney and he couldn't have been better. And he navigated me through the whole process, and it's pretty.
Do you mind sharing his name?
Yeah, 𝗦𝘃𝗲𝗵𝗵𝗵 his name is. And you know, you talk about like wanting somebody that's been in the end zone before, and like this dude's like been in the end zone. Like knows how to navigate the process, knows all the people. You know, we got to the hearing, he's like waving at everybody because, like, you know, it's a small community of folks that do these things. So 𝗦𝘃𝗵𝗵𝗵's great. So basically, it helps you come up with a plan. The first step of the process is, you know, you fill out some paperwork with the attorney. So he's going to tell you, okay, how many units you got, what are you trying to do, so the basics of the property, and then from there he's going to say, okay, we're going to work on getting the alderman on board, or all the alderwoman on board. And so we had to have a couple of meetings just to pitch our plan. Some cases you meet with the alderman, alderperson one-on-one. In other cases, we've had to go pitch to a zoning committee that they've created to share our plan. But ultimately, what we were trying to do was we had three 6-unit buildings on the same block. We wanted to legalize a 7th unit in the basement. So this was going to require a zoning change from I guess RS3 to RS5 in order to allow for that 7th unit. So usually when you go pitch your plan to the alderperson, they're gonna lay out some requirements that they might have. There might be a covenant for affordable rent at a certain AMI percentage. That's usually a pretty standard one. Some may say you have to dedicate the unit to a local charity organization to fill it with someone in need. At the time when we were doing this, there was a lot of there was the influx of Ukrainian refugees, and so you know, in one scenario we offered a caveat where we'll either make it affordable or we'll dedicate it towards, you know, the refugee population, something like that. So there's a lot of ways you can a lot of proposals you can make, and what I would suggest to people is like come in with some thoughts here, right? Don't, you know, you might get told what to do, right? But sometimes it helps to come in with a, hey, here's what we're thinking. You know, how does this work? The alderman that we worked with in the first deal basically said, we understand that this has to pencil for you. He was smart enough to know how the math works, right? So he said, what level of AMI, you know, what percentage of AMI would work to get this deal done for you? And we came to an agreement on a term that way. And he goes, all right, X amount of years, X AMI, and I'm being vague just because I don't want to like get people to think that, oh yeah, it's going to be this and this every time I go through this, right? So it's kind of whatever you negotiate, whatever works for you, and you go from there. So now you have an agreement with agreement with the alderperson.
Where was this property at?
This one was in West Town. So 2600 block of Augusta.
Okay.
Yep. And a lot of that had been gerrymandered already. So we just got a new alderperson at the time. So originally we were talking with one. A year later, or 6 months later, the alderman changed and the award changed. We went from the 26th to the 36th. So anyway, once we got in the door, it's a pretty straightforward process there. But then then the fun started. You got to get architects in the building, so they're going to require plans for not just the unit that you want to change, but the entire building. So we had to get in every unit, draw plans for all those. They want to understand how much yard space is in the back. Are there parking spaces? Is there green space? The big density adding question is always, okay, where are the people going to park? So we had all these strategies around, okay, we're not adding parking, but Augusta's a pretty main line. You got a bus line on Division, one on Chicago. We have bike storage in the basement. That was a big thing that we wanted to talk about in this process. So you put all those details together, the attorney submits your packet. It might make it to the next zoning committee hearing. It might not. It might make it to the next one or the next one. So that's the iterative part where if the zoning committee's got a lot on the agenda, you might get pushed to the next one or the next one. So we had to sit through like 3 iterations of this.
Is that months, or do they meet on a monthly basis, or like
once a month?
Yeah, once a month, exactly. And so we got bumped a few times, which, you know, it was fine. It just gave us more time to sweat and prepare. But yeah, it was once you get it, so you do the architect, you do all that paperwork. Once you get in the room, if the alderman already gave you a thumbs up, you're likely going to get a thumbs up from the room, you know. And adding a basement apartment is not the end of the world typically, and is not going to move the needle for a neighborhood. So typically everyone's on board with it. And by and large, the feeling I got in the room was that most folks there like the ADU zone program and want to expand it. I say most. I don't know how everyone, but at least the ones that we interacted with. So, so anyway, we got the thumbs up, and from there, now you got to get the work done, right? So, apply for the permits, and sometimes what the architects say you have to do can differ from what the city says you have to do. So we had some interesting lessons learned there with adding the 7th unit.
So before, let's stay on Department of Zoning before we go to Department of Buildings. There are 2 sides of this. Also, side note, I'm in the one I just did, same ward, same alderman.
Okay.
So I literally just went through the same experience here.
Good.
So,
Good.
All right. So for our listeners out there, this is why being an ADU zone is so powerful. You can bypass all this. You have to meet the Department of Building requirements, which we're going to get into, which could be water service. It could be making sure you have enough egress, 7 feet height, all the physical structures. You don't have to go through these months of sitting through and also like paying up front. You're paying for the attorney up front. You're paying for these plans up front, and you don't know if it's going to hit or not. So it's all just, you're taking a risk there of, okay, I spent a few grand and I waited 3 months and I'm just back to where I started. Like
it's more than a few grand. Like what, like, so if you're going to take your plans, you're going to take the attorney fee and the donation you probably made. Like how much are we talking here?
So almost 20. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say mine's a little less because I already had to do plans anyway. So it was just a revision. Like I was already gutting the place, and the way I did it was it's 6 units. I'm legally 5. I wanted to make it 6. I did plans for a 5 unit duplex down. So we can start work, we can do everything while this is all going on. So the building's not sitting there vacant, if that makes sense, right?
So
and if they didn't approve me, that's what I was going to do. I was going to have a 5 unit with one of the units duplexing down, right? So I can work at 80% of the building while I'm sitting here waiting for them to give me my approval or not give me my approval. So I paid for 2 sets of plans, but one was almost a copy and paste version.
I know I did it twice, and the attorney by itself was 12 grand, just alone, like for the process.
Yeah, man, those phone calls, stop, get done before the 15-minute mark.
Well, I remember the first time.
The day of costs you thousands of dollars because he might be sitting there for 6 hours.
Well, but I remember him going
to me. It's your turn to go, and like you're paying by the hour.
He goes, "Well, here, we do this a flat fee, so we cut the developer's deal, and we're gonna do it for a flat 12,000." I'm like, "Man, you motherfucker!" Like, I started doing. I'm like, even if you got $500 per hour, like, I mean, like, you just know we're close. You're getting to $12,000 worth of value here, but you just know you got to play it.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So that's
and that was an attorney referred to me by the alderman too. So same scenario.
And if you had a 2300 Augusta address, you would have been in the ADU zone and not have to do any of this, right? Western's the cutoff there.
Yep.
Right. Mine's on the 2500 block, and same thing. I was 100 yards away from not having to do any of this.
Last year, this was supposed to pass to be everywhere for that. So I'm hoping that this episode will be outdated here in the near future, where the whole city will have that opportunity. So.
Yeah. So that's the clumsy paperwork zoning aspect of the equation that the ADU helps you get through. And if you're not an ADU, this is how you do it. This is the risk you take. Now, regardless of ADU or not, and we'll get to it now. Let's get to the building side of things, because you have to submit your plans, you have to submit your permit, And this opens the door up to a lot of different things like water service or, so talk on your project here, talk to some of those quote unquote gotchas of, oh crap,
Yeah.
now we have to do this, that, and the other.
Yeah. So the first thing we got wind of was, okay, you're going to have to increase from 3/4 inch water main to 1.5 inches, right?
Yeah. 25 grand down the drain. Here you go.
Yep.
You get your 𝗬𝗏 permit. Yep.
Exactly. And so what we learned a few weird things here, right? We're like, okay, on Augusta, we're on the odd side of the street. Well, the
hydrants on the other
fire
side.
hydrants are on the even side. Yeah. So we gotta block traffic. And we said, well, we got 3 on the same block. Does that give us any help? And they're like, no. Yeah. So we got a bunch of quotes on this, but to increase it, 20 to 40 is the quote range we got, and obviously we want to go with the lower end, but yeah, expect 25 grand out the door per building anytime you do this.
And cheaper in the burbs for those who out there are saying, wait, I'm getting it done for 15. In the burbs, you can just jet it in. You don't have to do the full pipe. You don't have to pay the 𝗬𝗏 permit. Like there it is, but in the city, like that's what you're gonna pay.
Yeah, for sure. And there's really no way around this. We're hoping that we can go the booster pump and expansion tank, whatever, to help the volume and pressure issue, but they want the 1.5 inches coming in. And so that was a big bullet that we bit. The second thing is electric service coming in. So all our buildings, in most buildings in the 6-unit size, are going to be around. You're going to typically have 200 amp coming in from the get-go, unless there was some rehab done there in recent history. And so all our buildings had 200 amp. Luckily, we were doing pretty extensive rehabs on 2 of the buildings, and we already had upgraded. At the time, there was a supply chain shortage, so one building got 600 amp and the other building got 800 amp, only because those were the 2 sizes that they had available to them. So yeah,
I heard 400 is not even like an option anymore. Like you just have to go all the way to 6.
Yeah,
like they can't get 400.
Correct, and that's what we were told, because if you read through the code, I think it says 400. It's the minimum standard for that size building, but they still have to do like the load test and stuff and make sure everything's. And I'm not an electrician by any stretch of the imagination, but that's a big one that costs a pretty penny upgrading to the 600. We've done it as cheap as $20,000, but in some cases it could cost more depending on the scope of what they're doing. So that's the second thing. Ceiling height, obviously a big one for basements and attics, whatever you're trying to add there. So in one of our units, we have to dig down, obviously adds a pretty, you have to hand dig. So it adds a pretty significant expense. Egress, windows, the architects are typically going to line a lot of this stuff out. What we're trying to do is we're working with the numbers, because our quotes for doing the basements came out pretty high. So we're trying to figure out is, does it make more sense to do a studio and reduce the window requirement if we had to cut into the wall? And so we're playing with some of the numbers on some of our newer units on, trying, I don't want to say game the system, but understand how could we reduce cost while keeping, I guess the future rent of the place sort of intact. And I guess adding a wall later, I shouldn't even say stuff like this, but adding a wall later wouldn't, or adding a bedroom later after the fact, after everything is approved, probably wouldn't be the huge end of the world either, right? So, but yeah, those are probably the 3 biggest hurdles: electric, water service, and height, window, egress requirements. If you lump all those things together.
Yeah, so there's a lot, and that's regardless if you're ADU or not ADU. Regardless, you're going to have to hit the building department requirements.
Yep, no matter what. Yeah, so I think that's what people forget, though, too, right?
Yeah, they figure ADU. I have 2 exits. I can make this a unit. Like, no, you're still going to go spend money on rehab here.
Yep, we have one of our buildings that we got upzoned already had the 7th unit done by an owner prior to us, and what we found was we still had to do the water service, we still had to do the electric in the building, so minimum. 45, 50 grand right there just to get it to, to code. So even with the work already done, you're still shelling out a shit ton of money to do it.
Yeah. City that works.
Yep.
Well, cool. No, that was an awesome deep dive, because we haven't gone through that process in detail. So I think that's, for those looking to go through that process, rewind the last couple minutes, because that's that's how it's done. So thank you for sharing all that.
Well, Andrew actually already started, and we'll tweak a little to make it. We could put it on the website, but you wrote out all this whole process timeline and all that stuff. So I think this would be something we'll clean up some of it and throw it on the website for everyone to download. So I think there's a lot more information that on his sheet even that we even got into. So I'm pretty excited about sharing that. If you're cool with us sharing that, Andrew.
Of course, yeah. I already had the attorney look at it too to make sure I didn't say anything stupid. So.
That's true. Risk aversion. I love it.
Yeah.
You only put walls up later. All right. So what? So what's next? You've done a lot. You guys are doing a lot. What's kind of next on the 1 to 5 year type outlook for you guys?
Yeah. So I promised my partners I'd stop chasing any shiny objects. So I have a bad, like funeral homes and Airbnbs and weird
funeral
spots.
homes are a shiny object. I love it.
People are dying to get into those places.
They're dying. They certainly are. I have a bunch of obscure one-off deals that I've helped raise capital for over the years, and I'm involved in some storage stuff, some Airbnbs in the mountains, and just things that just take up time and distract me from my main focus. And so my goal is to grow our property management business, to grow our core number of units and that we own in Chicago. And make that side of the world more efficient. So our thesis is obviously we look for value add, sometimes non-traditional routes, but we're trying to buy when it's good rate environments. We're trying to buy when it's bad rate environments, everything in between. We're planning on holding for 30, 40 years. When our kids are born, we're all in the age of having kids now, but we all joke in our cards for the kids is that one day you're going to inherit this poorly run business that your parents put together, between the three partners here. So, but we're trying to pick up 3-4 properties a year. We have a strong investor base, and we're trying to put their capital to work effectively and efficiently. And the deals we're buying now, the ones we're not buying in cash, it's funny, there's some of the best cap rate deals that we bought to date, yet they're the worst ROI right now just because of where rates are at, right? And oddly enough, one of our credit unions that we work with has a loan product that gives us 2 free rate drops throughout the life of the loan. So this is an interesting thing for people that are worried about locking in a 7.25% interest rate right now with a commercial loan. There are products out there. There are some lenders that are getting creative. So if at any point in time rates drop and we pull the trigger, we get 2 free opportunities to reduce our rate to market throughout the life of the 5-year fixed. So something to consider. And I don't know if I should. I mean, I could share the lender, Self-Reliance Credit Union on Chicago Ave there, the Ukrainian bank there. So something for people to consider. I think it's a really good product and it's very competitive. And the rates are pretty good. They're sitting at 6.9 right now, which I've gotten other quotes lower. I've gotten other quotes higher, but with those rate bullets, we call them rate bullets. It makes it a very unique product for us.
Nice.
That's good stuff. Well, cool. Mark, are you ready to wrap?
Ready to wrap. All right, Andrew, you ready?
Yep.
What's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this while so many other wish they could?
I think the biggest piece is action, right? Just I'm kind of stubborn, and I try to I set some unrealistic goals sometimes. But I would say for anyone that's trying to get into this game, 2 things I always tell them. One, just go out and do it. People are worried about whether they can raise money or not. I bet if you got a place under contract, you'd figure out how to raise the money. So just go out and do it. And I'd say it's sometimes easier to buy bigger deals than it is for smaller deals. We do mid-sized apartments. We don't go after 100-unit places, but compare the process of buying a duplex versus a 6, 8, 10 unit. It's much easier to buy the 6, 8, 10 unit all day. So don't be afraid to go bigger sooner.
Got it. All right. You kind of already answered this, but what is the one piece of advice you would tell someone who's yet to buy their first property in Chicago?
I got ahead of myself there.
Yeah, you jumped ahead. Now you got to give them more advice.
We're presenting to Chicago Booth Veterans Group tomorrow, and I wrote down some of these things, so it's kind of good timing. But let me just, I don't know, I have a little bit of a list here, but let me I'm gonna open it up for a second, and I'll read off a couple others that I put on here. So don't, a lot of things I tell people, like, people don't know where to start. And they're like, I'm going to go get an LLC and I'm going to go get business cards and create a website. Like, you don't need any of that shit. Like, people, like, I think
Yeah,
people put
stop
the cart
playing
before the
business and
horse
get
so many
things
times.
done.
Exactly. Like, oh, I'm the CEO of this company that owns nothing, right? Like, I mean, I did it too when I was 22. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. And so I would say, like, don't worry about that stuff. Find a deal, then you could worry about growing and scaling, and then getting your business cards, right? Like, no, nobody cares about your hold co that holds nothing, right? Go out and find some deals and before you do any of that stuff. The next piece I'll say is what I've learned over the years is, like, I figured out what I like to do in this business, and I figured out what I hate to do in this business. And why should I double down on the stuff that I hate when I could double down on the stuff I'm really good at and focus on that and the stuff I like to do? So we brought in team members to help with the shit that sucks, and I spend my time analyzing deals, trying to pick up more management clients, things that drive the needle more, and I like to do. So those would be the those aren't Chicago specific, but those would be the other two pieces of advice I'd give people.
Awesome. What do you do for fun?
I got two little kids, 4 and 3. And so when I quit my W-2 a few years ago, my goal was to spend as much time with my family as possible. And I cook them breakfast and cook them dinner almost every night of the week. And so, spending time with them and my wife is pretty fun and enjoyable for me. I like to travel. We haven't done a lot of that lately, but my wife and I like to go to all kinds of places, so we're gonna hopefully get to do more of that. And I like looking at old buildings. I think that's a pretty cliche thing to answer for someone in the real estate space, but like I kind of get off to these cool architecture that Chicago has to offer. So
great. All right. What is a good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend to our listeners?
Obviously, your podcast is great for the Chicago specifics. There's 3 that I listen to. My First Million, 𝗬𝗏𝗵𝗁 and Sam Parr. Really cool breakdown of business. They're more tech focused guys, but they're very, very sharp dudes, and they a lot of cool insights into starting and growing a business. That's kind of all they talk about, is like going from 0 to a million or 0 to 1, whatever you want to break it down. So My First Million, obviously first getting into real estate, like, devour the _bigger_pockets stuff. The older content's actually really good. I haven't listened to a lot of the newer stuff, but yeah, I probably listened to the first 100, 200 episodes, in the early, 2010s, 2011, 12, 13, all around there.
Episode 72. Woohoo!
I love it. I love it. So those would be my podcast recommendations. Obviously, if you never read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's an overused answer. I'm reading now. Buy Then Build is a cool one. And just to get in the mindset of okay, sometimes you don't have to grow and scale your own company. Sometimes you can scale through acquisition and get a little bit ahead. So we're looking to maybe bolt on some service-based businesses to our companies, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. And so the thought of, okay, maybe we buy an existing company and then look to grow it from there. So just things we're thinking about right now, but that's another cool book, Buy Then Build, it's called.
Awesome. All right. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network you'd highly recommend to other investors.
I really respect Jason Wagner. I know a lot of people talk about Jason, but I don't talk to him nearly as much as I should, but I like his takes. I like his data that he shares, and he's a good agent. So he'd be a good resource. And JD, obviously on the short-term rental side, like, pick his brain. He's super smart. JD Modrak, and then 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I don't know if you guys know Kirby, but
Yeah.
he's in Indiana now, but he does a lot of vacation rental stuff. So, but he used to be in Chicago pretty heavily. So he's another one that I would highly recommend for sure.
He used to be down there like Frankfurt or something. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Very good. Well, we already mentioned JD, but then Jason Wagner, episode 224. Go back and listen about the Northwest side of Chicago.
Awesome.
All right. So Andrew, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Please also talk about your meetup. I know my friend Ellen Tang was very, very excited that we were interviewing today. And then where can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, I'm pretty accessible person. My website, DorazioRealEstate.com, and our management company and our holdco, 𝗣𝘃𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗏𝗏 Real Estate Group, .com. Both our websites, you can get to us pretty easily. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever. My team kind of keeps me up to date on all the social stuff. I don't do a lot of it, but you can find me on there. I'm probably the most accessible human you could find. So look me up, text me, call me. I will talk to anybody about real estate. So if the best way to help me, come to our meetups. We're doing every like 6-7 weeks. We host a veteran in real estate meetup where we have different topics. You don't have to be a veteran to come. We're trying to get we're just trying to provide value in the Chicagoland area and have some good speakers and good content and just good networking. So yeah, it'd be the best way to help come support those and meet the group, meet the team. So
all right, very good. Mark, we got a Chicago fact.
We do.
Who's sponsoring? Who are we playing for?
Today's sponsor is movers Chicago, and we're playing Douglas Jeremy. So I'm not sure if it's Jeremy Douglas or Douglas Jeremy, but he bought something on the Straight Up Chicago investment merch store. And if myself or Andrew get this question right, you get $50 gift card brought to you by Movers Chicago.
Very good. I drove down 𝗬𝘃𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗏𝗏 the other day. I was like, oh, there's their headquarters. I see it.
I like the guys at Movers. I have bath bombs upstairs that are labeled by them from the last meetup they came to. So
we didn't get any bath bombs. Boy, we gotta talk to Karen here. All right. So we have a veteran on the show today. So I have a question related to that. So you'll get multiple choice on this, but where in Chicago is the Above and Beyond installation that suspends over 58,000 dog tags? And your options are the National Veterans Art Museum, the Regiment Armory in Brownsville, Memorial Hall, or Oakwood Cemetery?
I'm gonna sound stupid not knowing this one.
I would have said Memorial Hall.
That would have been my first guess, but I have to pick something different.
Double the choices.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with one. I'm gonna go with the Bronzeville one because I don't think that's the right answer, but sometimes that's the answer when it doesn't seem like it's the right one.
No, this is at the National Veterans Art Museum.
Oh no, where's that at?
I do not know. I just
Okay.
went on.
All right.
I guess I got to figure that one out too.
No, Andrew, we'll pretend you knew. It's all good. All right, awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you for coming on. And Douglas Jeremy, I'm sorry, we did not get the $50 gift card brought to you by Movers, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw your name back in the hat, and you potentially get drawn again. So
this thing's in my backyard, by the way. It's at Irving, Milwaukee.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. Well, Andrew, thank you for coming on. Tom, thank you for coming on. Listeners, you can find Andrew's networking event at straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Right on the homepage, there's a Chicago meetups button. His is on there along with 27 other local Chicago and suburb meetups. So check that out there. It's nicer. A lot of these events are outside and these nice summer nights. So check it out, straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Andrew, thank you. Tom, thank you. Listeners, we will see you next week.
Thanks all.